the largest empire in Minecraft history, forged from pure military might and strategic-minded generals. Today we're looking at how the mighty Empire of Solge rose from obscurity to conquering much of the world of Abexilas on the Stoneworks Minecraft server. You can join this server, make your own empire, and go on campaign too. Just put in the IP play.stoneworks.gg and hop on to Abexilas. The greatest empires of history often start with just one village. This is Soliana, a little Byzantine-style town of sun worshippers that formed from a group of experienced Eldamite players under their leader, Paragon, thriving in the southwest island region of Abexilas. Even though their world was small, their issues and politics felt monumental. A neighboring town called Roland fought and raided them over a land dispute, and their town government suffered instability and a coup. But all of this would change as Soliana militarized into the central powerhouse of this region. Most Minecraft histories tend to focus on the nation borders and the populated communities of Abexilas, but true military power comes from the mercenary groups. At this point, there was a group called Ocular, which was headed by a Solianan player named Sinister Asp. Players would gather together from all around the world, from Soliana to the faraway friendly nations of Halge and Sakhria, to fight as a trained and cohesive army for their allies, or for whomever paid them the most. As the diverse mercenaries of Ocular fought hired wars all around the world, they grew rich and prosperous, and their nations benefited from the strength, protection, and money that their mercenary citizens brought in. This is the first step to building a militaristic expansionist empire. Actually have a good military. Be good at PvP, or at least be good friends with a mercenary group. As the states in this region began to grow larger and stronger, there arose the first real power on the continent's mainland. A nation with a strong mercenary group called Scalaga created a diplomatic alliance of several states called the Halen League. If you've seen my video on the Minecraft Crusader states, then you might recognize this. This organization let the dominant Skalagans exercise a bit of power over the entire continent, and they even went so far as to consider fusing it into a big union under their control. That is, until one small incident started an explosive chain reaction. The little country of Galadon, a member of the Halen League and neighbor to Soliana, settled a town in their territory and claimed it as theirs. This began an argument that escalated into Skalaga's intervention, Soliana refusing to be subject to the League's mediation, and both sides preparing for war. Immediately, two rival neighbors that were aligned with either side started attacking each other, the cities of Metron and Evankite. Soliana sent troops to the city of Metron to defend against the Alamein and Scalagan invaders. But just as the battle was about to start, they saw that Scalaga had infiltrated their ranks and cut the communications of all their Solianan and Metron fighters. The resulting battle became chaos, so the Scalagans overran the Solianans and pushed them back into the town of Metron. Soliana then turned to their former vassal called Steelwater, who had recently betrayed them and flipped to join the Halen League. The Solianans launched an invasion of their island, and the Scalagans poured materials and men from their Halen League to the defense of the city-state, but it wasn't enough. The Solianans defeated them and captured most of the island, holding out for the second battle, besieging the city. But the Scalagans launched an attack on the Solianans' vulnerable exclave of Wintertopia. The Solianans arrived at the village to find a new massive wall around it, so they climbed atop it and repelled the Scalagan invaders. At this point, having repelled the Halen League's direct advances, Soliana consolidated its nearby alliances into the Swords of Halen. Scalaga pushed the Halen League to increase their production for weapons and armor in the war, but they were all becoming burnt out and demotivated at these losses. The Halen League nations of Leyden and Avadora even switched sides to join the favored Solianans. With the League cracking under this pressure and the Scalagans having lost their momentum and war supplies, the Solianans and their allies planned an audacious offensive, where they would blitz forward on all three fronts on the same day. The Solianans marched into the terracotta city of Evankite and crushed the resistance there. They assaulted the heavily fortified city-state of Steelwater, penetrating their defenses and taking the city, and they counterattacked out of Wintertopia to Skalaga's castle of Fort Heston, blowing through the walls and occupying it to take Skalaga's entire western flank, directly threatening their heartland. The Scalagans saw the writing on the wall, and they fled their nation, collapsing the Halen League behind them. So the war was won, and the continent was left open to the victorious Solianans and their ocular mercenaries. With the end of the war, Soliana marched in and conquered much of the snowy core Scalagan territory and the city-state of Steelwater. But these directly taken cities were not the real prize. The real prize was the fact that Soliana and its mercenaries had walked up to the biggest guy in the room and knocked him out while everyone else was watching. The balance of power on the continent shifted from Skellige to Soliana, proving to everyone around that they were in charge of this region, and that if you want to be left alone or be on the right side of a conflict with them, you need to cooperate with them. It was in this way that Soliana achieved its first major expansion, as the mayors and nations of the surrounding islands and peninsula flocked to join under them, and they imperially established themselves as the uncontested hegemon of this continent. This is the second big pillar of empire building. Don't focus on directly attacking and conquering territory. Focus on showing your neighbors that you are a mighty power so that they want to work with you and will think twice about messing with you. But as Soliana will soon learn, if anyone challenges you on that power, you better be able to back it up. One of the ocular mercenaries, the player Caustic from the faraway land of Halge, came up with the idea of uniting these nations around the mercenary group. That way, they could dominate the world as a single state. This was especially notable coming from the land of Halge, which had a roller coaster of history behind it. It grew as a prominent empire at the center of a continental treaty organization. It joined a powerful overseas empire with a bunch of leaders who immediately started conflicting. Its popular king, Michael 83, was killed by his deputy Silvix, which out of character means he was banned for breaking the rules. Halge's economy and power declined, and that ocular mercenary and Halgean citizen Caustic began a minor rebellion after an argument over a trident. Things were not looking good. In response to this trident rebellion, the Halgean leaders began to seriously consider Caustic's idea to really embrace their intimate relationship with the ocular mercenaries. In time, they would reach out to their Solianan peers in an effort to form a union. The two friendly regional powers from across the world agreed, as they could help stabilize and enrich each other, so they finally formed as the Empire of Solge. This shows the third pillar of empire building. Events will continuously destabilize and imperil other groups around you, and if you have a good relationship with them, they will join up with you. All you have to do is be patient, be friendly, and take the opportunity when it arises. This is the most important pillar if you just want territory. Now that the state of Solge was solidifying, the ocular mercenaries also merged with another dominant mercenary gang into Aragotha. The leaders, it's Dreezy, Hasafel, Silvix, Hatchet Doctor, Alex is the Best, and Sinister Asp, would lead the mercenary backbone that Solge relied upon, supported by the business and political acumen of leaders like Abajon, Rapid Fire 323, and Lox is Lost. It is important to note here that the Solgian mercenaries Sinister Asp and Alex is the Best would flex their muscles to try and extort free towns and large cash payouts from their smaller innocent neighbors, and this behavior made everyone hate Solge for very little direct gain. This cut off many future diplomatic opportunities, but it also gave them a scary reputation that maybe kept others from messing with them. Despite this, forming a state-like entity around the Aragotha mercenaries turned out to be a smart move. Aragotha could still take contracts and fight wars all over the world, while Solge got to have the borders, the towns, and the businesses. So as one of the world's most monumental wars raged on the northern continent of Tiberia, as two coalitions fought over the questions of colonization and imperial hegemony, the Empire of Solge was left vanquished. Aragotha was hired around on both sides of the war, but the Solgian leader was friends with those in Solge. In their post-war vulnerability, the Solgians gave their empire over as vassals to Solge. This great expansion not coming from conquest, but from diplomacy with a vanquished empire. Solge had grown to the largest empire on the world of Abexilas, but the greatest threat would not come from abroad, but from within.
I am Steve.
One of Solge's heartland villages, called Akara, became unhappy with the Empire and rebelled, joining the nearby nation of Orion. Solge marched its armies out to Akara in preparation to attack it with overwhelming force, and there they saw the soldiers of a rival mercenary gang called Paragon, as well as those of their satellite nation of Valendor. With this mercenary intervention, the war would grow to become massively destructive. The rebel-helping nation of Orion got frightened by this and backed off of Akara, reorganizing itself and joining as a satellite state to the Paragon mercenaries. While the Paragon threat to the region seemed to be growing in size, the rebellion was put to rest without any fighting. These events made clear to Solge that they needed to stabilize and secure their core southwestern territories, so their next move was to finally attack and annex their old neighbor that had been a thorn in their side, the town of Roland. Roland had joined the nearby nation of Thalor, which refused to give up their exclave to the Empire. Solge planned an invasion into the mainland of Thalor, but it soon became apparent that the Paragon Mercenaries and its satellite nation of Valandor were again coming to the aid of their enemies on the home front. Thalor was so reliant upon them for their defense that they even merged into the nation of Valandor. So Solge changed their plan. Instead, they would strike directly at the heart of Valandor, sailing to the faraway island of Deshella to destroy their homeland. The invading Solge army convinced a few of the island areas to rebel before they trekked up the Maizen Mountains and attacked the mining town of Azarax. Valandor had not yet finished setting up their home defenses and were outnumbered by the Soljan army, so Azarax was beaten and brutalized in the battle. Many Valandor leaders fled the home island, including the mayor of the capital, who in his resentment unclaimed the entire town for Solge to immediately march upon and annex. So, with just this one decisive battle in the minor mountain town, Solge had broken the kingdom of Valandor, frightened its citizens into rebellion and exile, and annexed its core territory. This is yet another tactic to empire building. Target the most powerful people on the other side, and their weaker followers will get the message. Now, after having fought the mercenary group of Paragon in several hired contract battles, in the toxic chats and Discord servers, and directly fighting over Valandor, things had become different. These two mercenary groups were now directly pitted against each other. They had grown too massive to share global military hegemony. So Solge and their mercenaries planned to strike at them directly in an attempt to take revenge and destroy the most powerful mercenary gang in the world. Aragotha eyed the personal holdings of Paragon's leaders, and they decided upon the desert area of Saint-Tier, a flat sandscape bisected by a great bedrock wall, hosting a single tower and a small seaside villa owned by the Paragon leader, Undai. So they declared war upon this property. The Aragothans soon marched into an ill-prepared and under-fortified town. There were workers digging the massive trenches and holes for the upcoming fights. The guards and scattered soldiers there couldn't put up a proper defense, so they tried to hold the Aragothan mercenaries back, but as their gear and armor broke from the fighting, they were pushed back and slaughtered. The Aragothans disrupted the Paragon war preparations and scouted out the land, but ultimately left after this first minor battle. The preparing Paragonites drew in their armies from far and near for the upcoming defense of Saint-Tier. As Solge and Aragotha gathered war supplies and allies for the decisive invasion. As they prepared, Aragotha gave a crash course to their allies on how to fight a war on Abexilas.
Alright men, today is our second battle with the mercenary empire of Paragon. Here's what we've done so far, and how we will secure victory for our people on the field of battle. First, the server staff has worked with both our sides to mediate some aspects of this war, so it is fair and just that we all will fight with honor, and not be a bunch of rowdy war hobos. Now take a look at the objective of Saint-Tier. It is surrounded by large trenches called ganks. These are the ultimate defenses on the battlefield, as there are no obsidian bunkers or lava bases here on Abexilas. Do not fall into these ganks during battle, or you will die and lose your kits. Your armor, weapons, cobwebs, pearls, and super exceptionally strong artisan secret brewed potions are all expensive. In the heat of battle, you will use your potions, and you will break your armor. It is vital then that you teleport as needed to our underground repot station, where the handy workers will rush to resupply you with fresh potions and armor, so you can be well supplied on the battlefield and kill more Paragon scum. When the battle commences, you will fight in your assigned teams alongside allied soldiers and mercenaries. In these teams, you will gain points in two ways. You get a couple of points if you kill a guy. You get a lot of points if you put down this thing that looks like a beacon called a capture block and defend it for 2 minutes. All while Paragon tries to destroy these capture blocks to get points for themselves. This means that the good fighters will be out there killing Paragon scum, and the mediocre fighters will hang back and defend our capture blocks. You can build during the battle with redstone, hay bales, cobwebs, slabs. Do not put redstone blocks around the capture block you are defending, because some speedy motherchucker's gonna run up to you with TNT and blow all our progress sky high. If that happens, you will break the TNT, you will yank it off the cap with a fishing rod, or if necessary, you will drop an anvil on top of it. And do not let the Paragon scum swarm around your cap block, because it will diminish our progress. There are more tactics if in a cave or some joker spawns an Elder Guardian nearby, but do not worry about those today. Your task is simple. Stay alive, kill Paragon soldiers, defend our cap blocks, and do not get in trouble for breaking the rules. This is our second battle here. If we win this handily, this wasteland is ours to conquer and annex, and the pathetic scum of Paragon will slouch away in dishonor and defeat. But if they win, they will come for you in a fiery rampage over all your little farms, your girlies and jodies in your bed. This is why Solge has never lost and will never lose a war, because the very thought of losing is hateful to Solge.
So the next day, the armies of Solge, Aragotha, and their allies marched upon the desert of Saint-Tier. The first team split to the north by the deep gank trenches, fighting squads of Paragon militants, pushing them into the ganks, chasing them down, and killing them. They distracted a large portion of Paragon's army up here and knocked some of their best fighters out of the battle. To the south around the Great Bedrock Wall, the second team had descended into a great stone hole dug into the desert. They set up cap blocks and defended them with a squad of soldiers, until Paragon mercenaries jumped down and placed TNT on them. The soldiers hooked them and dragged them onto the ground, and the fighting went back and forth over the capture block here. The Paragonites bursted out in hit-and-run tactics, striking the defenders and laying TNT over the caps, but the Soldians cleared the explosives and held their ground, racking up points in the war slowly with each cap block defended. The war became more dire for Paragon as their warriors were killed and pushed into the ganks, and the Soldians fought off their hit-and-run strikes. So they launched a full-force counteroffensive into the Soldian town of Metron, sailing onto its docks and clashing with the defending team there. The Paragonites cut their way through them and were able to climb to the highest point of the town, onto the head of a great Viking statue, and placed a defended capture block there to gain their points back. The Soldian armies followed them to the town and climbed up to them, where a great melee took place on top of the statue of the final capture block. The Paragon warriors pushed them back and held their ground, successfully defending the capture block to get these points on the battlefield. But as the fight around the statue continued into the final minutes of the war, the Aragothan leader Sinister Asp circled the cap in the air, flying with his elytra, and snuck up behind the defending mercenaries to knock them off the statue, their gear exploding on the ground on impact, enabling the Soldian army to climb up the statue and mine out the final capture block. When it was all said and done, Solge and Aragotha had snatched an overwhelming victory from Paragon, conquering their leader's home base and sending them away to other lands. While planning a retaliatory campaign, the group's leaders were killed and the mercenary gang disbanded. There was now no one on the world of Abexilas that could challenge the supremacy of Solge or its Aragotha mercenaries, and thus, finally completing the ladder to conquest and glory, Solge had proven itself as the empire to reign eternal. Or will it? Because despite Solge's growth recently, there have been several ways that nearby nations have defied them and defended themselves. In a recent war, the small state of Quiche used deceitful tactics to drain their armories and avoid a direct battle. Other cultural nations have utilized a strong power on the server rewarded to creatives and artists, called roleplay tokens, that can be used to shield their towns and cities from wars, or even cancel a war that Solge desperately needed to happen. But there's one way that is written in the books of ancient prophecy that may spell the final end of Solge and a fiery downfall, that one day there will rise an unknown and ordinary player who fulfills the 8 trials of the prophecy and rallies the crowds of Abexilas behind them, that they will call this player Messiah, and the Messiah will rain fire down upon the militants of this violent empire, in the worldwide apocalypse deemed the Day of Kol Shaddai. Now that Solge has suddenly declared its most audacious and arrogant conquest yet, the time of the rising Messiah seems to be upon us. If you want to create your very own empire today, join at the IP play.stoneworks.gg. Just hop onto the world of Abexilas, join a town, and it all starts from there.